It's a new week, and here we are going live talking about the war in Iran. But of course, it's not just confined to Iran, and indeed, the war in Ukraine came first. And you can, in some respects, sort of link these together. And today we're going to make that explicit link because Ukraine has struck two of the key port infrastructures of Russian oil export. That is Primorsk in the Leningrad region and Ust-Luga. Well, we're going to get into that in a minute because this is absolutely linked to Trump's adventures, let's say, misplaced adventures in the Middle East, lifting sanctions against Russia, lifting sanctions against Iran. The manifest absurdities of all of this is something we're going to unpack. Before we do, I'd like to introduce my co-host today, David Debata, in this format of the Dictators. And indeed, we created this format because it does seem that the whims and caprices and demands of dictators are sending the world into a chaotic tailspin. David, happy Monday to you.
Happy Monday to you, my British colleague. Thank you very much. Yeah, I'm really happy to be here with you. This is our daily now live stream called The Dictators. And I just want to briefly put this up as I do, which is the fact that I also have my own YouTube channel called the No Delusion Zone. I encourage folks to go there, No Delusion Zone, as well as my website, which is protectingtherepublic.com. And Jonathan, do we Americans need to protect our republic now more than ever from the craziness of Donald Trump and MAGA? But yeah, the two conflicts today, the what's going on in Ukraine, what has been going on in Ukraine for years, and the war in Iran are linked. So if you want to kick it off with Primorsk, and we will go from there.
Yeah, absolutely. And so this is significant. And I think Zelensky hinted at this, at least, because he made the conscious association. He called out the suspension of sanctions against Russia. He pointed out, firstly, how much the oil price has spiked for Urals crude. It absolutely hit the floor just prior to this adventure in the Middle East, to the point where it was very likely that Russia was not actually going to be making money from its oil transit, actually losing money on every transaction. Urals crude hit an absolute low of $41 a barrel. That is not a sustainable rate. That's not a rate at which it was contributing to the Russian war economy and exchequer. We can speculate in all sorts of ways about how Russia may have influenced the US and Israel to kick this adventure off. That is in the realms of speculation. What is not speculative is that Russia's benefited, one, massive from the spike in oil prices and reduced sort of global supply, but also now it has benefited from the suspension of oil sanctions against Lukoil and the Rosneft, and indeed the lifting of sanctions of Russian oil at sea. This explains Scott Bessent in his uniquely perverse logic. This is apparently a jiu-jitsu move. By lifting sanctions against Iran and Russia, the two key adversaries, this apparently is incredibly smart on the part of the US, putting money into the coffers of its adversaries. Those two adversaries are fueling war and chaos around the world, and in particular Russia against Ukraine. Well, I'll ask you to try and make sense of that in a minute. Ukraine only has one choice, and it has the choice to impose the sanctions that the world refuses to impose, either through the kind of leaky and fairly pathetic sort of price cap sanctions and grey fleet sanctions, which nations are really not enforcing, including European allies, are not enforcing in a systematic way. And now the US has just given them a big green flag to go and sell their oil to people like India and so on. The only choice open to Ukraine is to physically, kinetically shut down Russia's oil infrastructure, prevent that oil from reaching those global markets where Russia can earn blood money for it. Over to you. Does any of this make sense? Does anything that Scott Bessent make sense, especially lifting sanctions against? Well, let's focus on the Ukraine strikes first, and then we'll go to the manifest absurdities of the policy vis-a-vis Iran.
Absolutely. I'm just going to read very briefly from an article here about the Ukrainian strike, and then I'm going to put up a graphic. A Ukrainian drone attack damaged fuel reservoirs at the oil export hub of Primorsk in northwestern Russia, regional authorities said on Monday. Leningrad regional governor Alexander Drozdenko said the port, which can export more than 1 million barrels of oil per day, caught fire after the attack. And it said that as well as the Primorsk port, the Ust-Luga port, located about 80 miles or 80 kilometers or 50 miles to the south, had also suspended operations. That's not the right graphic. This is the port at Primorsk. This is what was hit by Ukrainian drones. And apparently it is now out of commission, as well as it said the Ust-Luga port, about 50 miles to the south of that. So to follow up on what you said, the Ukrainians, are pursuing a let's shut down the damn Russian oil reserves, their production, their facilities. They can't necessarily knock out the shadow fleet, but they can certainly, and they have been targeting the oil production facilities, the pipelines and so forth, and they're doing a very good job. This was really far. This was another one of the exceptional missions that the Ukrainians have carried out with their drones, and they're going to continue to do more of that. Look, getting back to what you said though about the American energy idiot. No, I mean, obviously, in a sane universe, in a normal non-Trump, non-MAGA universe, feeding your adversary, allowing them to gain the advantage, to financially gain from anything during a war, to allow them to get an advantage is insane. Lifting the sanctions on Russia, lifting the sanctions on the Russian shadow fleet, and now apparently allowing the Ukrainian or Iranian oil to flow out of the Persian Gulf, of course, is insane. But what has Donald Trump and MAGA done over the last 14 months or so that has not been counterproductive and insane? This is spiraling out of control. We're going to talk in just a few minutes about Kharg Island and what the American military is planning on doing there. I put out my own podcast yesterday on this, Jonathan, about the suicide mission that's being planned for the U.S. Marines to stage an amphibious assault against Kharg Island. There's a Marine MEU, a Marine Expeditionary Unit, which is steaming towards there right now, should arrive in the next few days. And as far as everyone knows, they are going to launch an amphibious assault on Kharg Island. I talked about how insane and suicidal that would be, and I'm not alone in that.
Just a quick one. We should use the S word. That gives trolls the spurious excuse to try and get your channel banned. So little heads up on that one.
Okay,
that's another.
I understand. How about the term of "fuck you"? Does that get us banned as well? It might.
Yeah, that doesn't necessarily go down well either. I use the word self-destruction because that doesn't seem to be on the.
God, I hate YouTube and I hate trolls, but you're absolutely right.
No,
you're absolutely right.
They'll then submit some kind of. This has happened to me. They'll actually submit some kind of takedown order. Claiming that the video is encouraging.
Well, let me just say that thousands of generals and other pundits have used that exact word, and those videos are currently appearing on YouTube.
They are, but if you're being targeted by Russian, trolls and hackers.
Let me just say that the Marine, the possibility of the Marines launching an amphibious assault against Kharg Island is extremely unwise. How's that, trolls?
Yeah, that is. And Lindsey Graham was boasting in his particularly vile and loathsome way about how wonderful this was. And, we took Iwo Jima. I think he's forgetting that those invasions of the Japanese islands in the context of the Second World War, which are entirely justified, cost vast amounts of American life. Vast amounts. And then in the end, the decision was made to drop nuclear bombs because it was thought that those operations were too costly in human life. So he doesn't really seem to have a handle on either military strategy or the historical detail.
Well, no, I mean, and those what you're just talking about, those were the most per soldier, the most bloody and worst missions that the Americans were involved in World War II. They had the highest casualty rates of anything. We're talking the island hopping, the amphibious assaults. And just really quickly on that note, I had an uncle who was in the Marine Corps during World War II, and he was preparing to assault the main island, the Japanese island, after Iwo Jima. This was just prior to the 2 bombs being dropped, and they had estimates by the Pentagon at that time, the U.S. military, that there would be over 1 million U.S. killed in action, KIAs. In addition to, they don't know how many wounded, if they were to launch an amphibious assault on the main Japanese island. So these are not things that are done on a whim, without planning. But apparently what's may, and I stress may, happen with Carg Island and the Marine Expeditionary Units. And there's 2, by the way, that are now being devoted to whatever assault is going to happen against Iran, a land assault. It's supremely unwise. And as I said, I am not the only one that's saying that. I'm one of many, many voices, whether it be pundits, American, generals, current or retired intelligence community folks. It's very unwise. The only thing I want to add real quickly to this, Jonathan, is that the 82nd Airborne, as we've talked about, and I've talked about over the last few days, did receive their official alert, their deployment alert a few days ago. They are en route to Iran for who knows what undisclosed location they're going to be dropped into Iran. In my opinion, another unwise decision if, in fact, they are deployed for an airdrop inside the Iranian homeland. What are your thoughts on that? Deploying the 82nd Airborne in and around Tehran or some perhaps nuclear sites?
That seems, I'm not a military analyst and so on, but it seems that is an extremely high risk measure. That would only make sense, it seems to me at least, if they were to have some guarantee that the civilian population would rise up and support them in that. I don't know what intelligence, of course, they have behind the scenes as to the veracity of that or not, but it seems thus far the strategy was to decapitate the regime, prompt a popular uprising. This would be over as quickly as, say, the Venezuela operation was. Job done, no real consequences. It seems to have the opposite effect. It seems that those who are inclined to oppose the regime either were tragically, taken out several weeks ago when it would have been far more pertinent to intervene, or they're simply bunkering down, waiting to see what the outcome is. And what you have is a regime that seems to have been actually bolstered by these attacks, not threatened necessarily by it. So yes, a lot of loss in terms of individual personnel. The intelligence minister, I think, when we went on last week, was the latest to be taken out, and there will be more. But it seems that this is a hydra, as we talked about, in that just lopping off the heads as they regrow is not going to destroy the beast of this one, nor is taking Karg, nor is potentially some kind of dropping troops around Tehran. How do you then logistically support them? Again, I'm not a military strategist, but how on earth do you make that work against, maybe they don't have great air defense, etc., but it just seems extraordinary logistically to try to maintain such an operation.
Well, I am old enough, unfortunately, to remember the failed rescue mission in 1980, launched by President Carter at the time to rescue the American hostages that were taken hostage during 1979 in the American embassy. That was a tragic failure, and it's just an example of the harsh, unforgiving conditions of the Iranian desert and how far it is from any support. 2 helicopters a helicopter crashed into one of the transport planes, or I forget exactly, or 2 helicopters may have crashed and burned. Many special operators, this was the origin of the Delta Force. They were killed, and the mission was scrubbed. It was a horrible and humiliating defeat, not a success at all. Again, that's just an example of trying to drop troops into the Iranian desert near Tehran, and doing whatever. I don't know what they expect the 82nd Airborne with 4,000 or 5,000 soldiers, great soldiers, well-trained, sure. But as you just said, and as I said over the last few days, how are they going to be resupplied over land? That would be insane to try to drive their ammunition and water and food to them. If they're going to fly it in, again, yes, they still do have anti-aircraft abilities. Are they going to ship it in? No, there's no sea lanes directly right there. Yes, the Persian Gulf, but we all know what's going on there. I'm not going to use the word you don't want me to use, but there would be horrendous casualties if the 82nd Airborne dropped in anywhere in Iran, whether it would be around Tehran or any of the suspected facilities, underground facilities that still have nuclear fission materials, where they hid the nuclear materials that were not bombed out of existence and are still underground. This is just ill-conceived, Jonathan. It's ill-conceived, and I feel bad for the troops, the American troops that are going to be taking part in whatever missions are coming up in the next few days and weeks.
Do you see some parallels here with the Russian invasion of Kiev and the absolute hubris, the poor planning, the hubris, maybe the poor intelligence, maybe not so much poor intelligence, but wrong assumptions about your adversary and their ability to push back against you? We know that Russia realized that it had to take the airfield at Hostomel in order to have any chance of surrounding Kiev. But they absolutely underestimated the willingness of the defenders to push them back. They underestimated the logistical challenge of taking a city that size. They had extraordinary hubris by driving a vast 40-kilometer column of armor, which then provided a sort of sitting duck target. It's a shame not more of that was taken out, but a lot was hit. It would seem to me that the same kind of poor conception, political interference, and hubris is what would lead to a radical humiliation of American forces. Now, they can almost certainly take Hog Island. That is, military intelligence suggests that absolutely they can take the facility. But if it was set on fire, if they were then to be sitting duck targets for Shaheeds, which they do not seem to have really planned for or got appropriate defenses against, then you could be seeing not just an immediate humiliation, but an humiliation playing out over weeks of attritional losses.
Well, I agree with you. And I said this, I believe it was yesterday in my podcast, that even if the Marines do, in fact, land on Karg Island successfully, assuming that that's what the mission is, Karg Island, if they do land successfully on Karg Island in an amphibious assault or from an airborne assault or whatever, who is to say that the Iranians are not going to totally strap explosives, are going to rig the entire island, especially the sites that contain the storage facilities of all of this highly flammable material. So even if they make it on shore unscathed, no casualties whatsoever, somebody in Tehran or in the mountains, the cliffs overlooking Karg Island, or really anywhere else, can just sit with a remote detonator and blow that entire island up, and it will go up like a small nuclear device, Jonathan, if in fact they rig all of the storage facilities for explosives. What's to stop them from doing that? Nothing, absolutely nothing. And that wouldn't take a lot of money or any of the ballistic missiles or anything else that the United States says they don't have. I know that the American generals and the intelligence community knows that. They've war gamed this out. But you mentioned what happened in Ukraine at the beginning of the war and the march to Kyiv. And I think we're seeing the same thing here, meaning that in Russia's case, the FSB and the GRU, the intelligence services, did know kind of what's going on, although they were misled well. But the problem was they never wanted to tell the truth to Putin. That was a death sentence. So they didn't. They told him what he wanted to hear, which is that the Ukrainian people are going to embrace the Russian troops with open arms. The same thing is happening to Trump. Even if we have good intelligence, nobody wants to tell Trump no, that this is a bad idea. So they're telling him what he wants to hear, which is success. It doesn't matter. America is you can't defeat America. We are unstoppable. And the same thing with Hexeth. So it's very, very similar. They're not telling the king that he's wearing no clothes. And unfortunately, I think we're going to see the results of that very, very soon in the next few weeks, if these plans actually come to fruition.
There's another really uncomfortable parallel here, I think, that needs to be pointed out, because we talked earlier about the manifest absurdities of what's going on. But these kind of absurdities can happen in democracies, of course they can, but
Sure.
they are far more common and they're far more probable in authoritarian regimes, especially when those regimes get to the point where they have no real connection with the people. That's not to say that authoritarian regimes cannot have some kind of collegiate sense or feedback loops in them. We know, certainly even in the first part of Putin's regime, that actually there was a certain level of feedback loop, and certain policies were made quite clearly to keep the population sort of lulled and compliant. But there comes a point in every regime where it becomes seriously detached from the populace, the point at which they start to have absolute contempt, in fact, and that usually kicks in about where the paranoia of their own regime survival comes in. Now, people are going to be a little upset, perhaps, in making this comparison with the US. But it seems to me that the Trump regime, 1 year in to his tenure, has no sense of being accountable either to the people, either the people who voted for him or those that didn't, to the institutions, the culture, the legislature, the constitution. There is no sense of accountability to any of these things. There's no sense of accountability to history, due process, etc. We saw that in the tearing down of the East Wing of the White House, and we see it manifest every day in that contempt and how it plays out, contempt towards the legislature, the media, and so on. Well, this contempt has the same characteristic of late stage ultra paranoid autocracy. It absolutely has the same stage. And what you tend to get at that stage, whether it's Gaddafi or Ceausescu or others, is the absurdity of decision making and situations also increases as that paranoia and repression increases as well. This is what's happening in the United States. We are seeing manifest absurdity. So, for instance, let's list it. The US is providing Ukraine with intelligence data so that Ukraine can hit Russian ports and oil facilities, those same ports and oil facilities that the US has just lifted sanctions on and is trying to help get their oil to market. Beyond absurd. That same Russia that is being favored by the US is providing intelligence to Iran to help kill Americans and destroy American assets. The madness just never ends. And now you have the US lifting sanctions on Iran, giving out, never mind the international oil markets and whether it's being done to try to ease oil pressure because of the market spiking because of the mad decisions that were made by the US. What this does in terms of geopolitics is it gives a signal to Iran and indirectly to Russia as well, and of course to China, that the US is weak, that it has no consistency, that it will lash out against its adversaries, but it cannot take the blows in return and will then appease them. This, in terms of the optics of geopolitics or power politics, is mad, on top of all the other inconsistencies and absurdity that arises from the policy. What I'm afraid to say to people, that is the outcome of a late stage paranoid authoritarian regime.
Well, of course, everything you're saying is true, but we're dealing in Trump's case with a lifelong narcissist who is now suffering from dementia or some severe cognitive disabilities. He's always been this way, but he's much, much worse. We both talked about a few days ago how one of his statements about the war in Iran was that it's fun. They asked, why is he doing it? And one of his off-the-cuff responses was, because it's fun. I'm just looking at something right now, as our viewers may or may not know, the next victim for Trump, he's considering invading Cuba. And last week, I'm just going to read a sentence. Last week, he told reporters at the White House that he believes that he'll have the honor of taking Cuba, adding, whether I free it, take it, I think I can do anything I want with it. This is a madman. This is a madman. And I just want to say that for the first time since he's taken office the second time last January, the Trump overall disapproval rating, according to a recent national poll, stands at 63%. That's way higher than it's ever been. Does it mean MAGA has finally come to their senses? Of course not. They have no senses to come to, but they are feeling the pinch. Food prices are higher. Gasoline prices are obviously higher. Housing prices are higher. The interest rate is going up. So they're feeling the pinch. That's the only reason. They feel that Trump has betrayed them. He didn't betray them. He wasn't behind them in the first place. The point is, Jonathan, for whatever reason, the vast majority of the country right now on the cusp of whatever happens next in Iran is against Donald Trump. He's always had his hardcore MAGA base, which has always stood about 30% of the voters in America. And it's there now. And it's going down perhaps a little bit. The chances of a Democratic blowout in the November elections and them retaking the government, the House of Representatives and the Senate, are excellent. That assumes that Trump and MAGA don't interfere with the elections, not cancel them, but control them to the point that they ensure that the Republicans will win, Trump will stay out his term, and MAGA will continue into another term ad infinitum. But if that doesn't happen, the Democrats should win, but who knows? And the next few weeks in Iran are going to tell us quite a bit.
And aren't there moves, while the world is distracted by all this, it does seem there are moves for Trump to try to work in all sorts of things. So there's a bill, I believe, going through your legislature at the moment about security at borders and airports, etc. He's trying to sneak in clauses there that ICE could be deployed, masked, with no restrictions, no accountability to airports. Just
no, he's doing it today.
He's doing it today. I mean, the optics of that playing out, plus deploying ICE to election centers, queues, etc.
Yes.
I mean, the optics of all of this are going to be shocking. Just imagine ICE piling on people as they step off the plane into the US. It'll become a pariah. Who's going to want to travel to the US or take that risk at this point in time?
Well, right now, the U.S. airports, for those of you who don't know, are horrendous. The lines are just crazy because the American Congress hasn't given ICE their new budget because of all of the problems with ICE, the murders, the horrendous, brutal behavior of ICE against immigrants, both legal and illegal, has caused the Democrats in Congress to withhold passing a new budget for ICE. They're operating without a budget. That translates to the Department of Homeland Security, of which ICE is a part, not being able to pay the security personnel, TSA, at the airports. About, I don't know what the percentage is, 40 or 50% or more of them have called in sick or quit, Jonathan. They're just not at the airport. The security lines are hours and hours long. That's a fact. And so Donald Trump, as you said, has threatened to deploy ICE at the airports with all of their, soft touches that they're well known for in dealing with the public, to take the place of security there. They have no training, by the way, in screening security or passengers for the airlines. So I don't know how that's going to work out, but it's going to be a masked, heavily armed force of untrained thugs at our airport, possibly starting as recently as today.
I mean, as we know, their customer service manner is impeccable.
Yes.
I mean, that's a cruel irony, given that actually they murdered multiple people on camera in cold blood and without justification.
Can you use the M word?
Yeah, I guess I haven't been banned for that one, but
all right.
But it's indisputable. I mean,
Yes.
there are those who will put some party political line or hackery behind this, but even Joe Rogan and others react to these things and say, look, we see what we see here, and this is a reality. We have a common reality. Well, we don't. For those that are justifying it, it shows there is no common reality. But the optics of this, the chaos it will engender, is extraordinary. Will the Democrats stick to it? Will they see this chaos? Will they cave? Will they then appease and go anything but this? Or will they stick to their guns? Because actually, in this instance, that level of chaos is going to blow back very hard against Trump.
I have no confidence the Democrats are going to get it together. I really don't. They're arguing still right now as we speak about whether or not to remove Chuck Schumer, who is the senior Democrat, the whip or whatever the heck he's called. He's the leader of the Democrats in the Senate. They're still arguing whether to remove this milquetoast, do nothing from the leadership of the Democratic Party in the Congress. This is insane. I tried to attend very quickly. I tried to attend a town hall, Jonathan, a few days ago of the Democrats in Florida, and I tried for the days in order to attend this online. It was a digital town hall, and guess what? I couldn't get on there. And after it was all said and done, I complained that I wasn't able to log on. I had all the codes and all that. And they said, oh, well, it wasn't a video, a live town hall. I mean, it was live. There was no video. You had to just write in your comments. I said, are you insane? The Democrats in Florida are not very well liked. And now you're doing a live town hall without video. You want people to just sit at home and write in their comments and have the candidates somehow write back. And you wonder why you're losing. So, no, I don't predict that the Democrats are going to get their act together. I think the rage, though, in America, Jonathan, though, is so intense right now against what's going on with prices that they still may edge out victories enough to get at least control of the House, the lower part of our Congress, and maybe the Senate. But that's wishful thinking.
I mean, with what's going on and the prices being a catalyst point, and with the sort of the right-wing podosphere, as it were, or the pod bros coming in against the regime, this should have been a point at which mass organized protest surely should be going on. There should be something of an extraordinary scale. We've got the No Kings, etc., but surely Democrats should align themselves far more explicitly with that, and they should be far more critical of the war, the chaos, the impunity on the streets, the prices.
We are Russians right now, chaos. Jonathan. We're Russians. We're Russians, and we're also the Germans of the 1930s. I wrote a huge article about that, the Germans and America. We are the Germans of the 1930s and the Russians of now, which is we go along to get along. We keep our heads down. We don't follow politics. We don't read the news. We are addicted to TikTok and all that, memes, and basically don't give a shit. And unless it affects us directly, we don't care. And even when it does, with the rising prices, we somehow find a way to get over that and still move on without doing absolutely anything, lifting a finger, or even speaking out as we do. So, again, I hate to say that. It's very, very depressing. But in America, we are the 1930s Germans, and we are the current day Russians, and that's disgraceful.
And in a future episode, I think we should tackle this idea of libertarian media, when in fact, one of these right-wing podcasters, I'll find their name for the next episode, has come out and they've explicitly said, they were asked the question, is there anybody in this sphere? Is there anybody at all who are pushing pro-Russian narratives, who are pushing extreme division, who are not being funded by external actors? And this person from that ecosystem said, well, do you know what? I don't think there are anybody left, unless they're getting money from, political parties directly or whatever, or particular think tanks. She said, no, of course, all of them are being paid by external parties. And one must assume that it's not America's friends that are paying for this. One assumes it's adversaries paying to divide and conquer. This debate about absolute libertarianism towards media, absolute laissez-faire towards the capital that's injected into it, this is what's eating and destroying the very foundations of democracy, the very foundations of national identity, cohesion, and open debate. The sooner we have a nuanced discussion about this, the better. But I think we'll save that for another live stream.
I agree with you. Look, the foundations of our democracy here, and for the trolls that are going to say it's not a democracy, it's a republic, go read the Constitution, go read anything, actually. We are a constitutional republic, which is a form of democracy. And the pillars of our democracy, one of them is free speech. That's being constantly eroded by the Trump administration going after those who have the guts to exercise their First Amendment right to free speech. They're being arrested, many of them. He's attacked big law firms that had the guts to stand up against him. He's attacked the courts. He's attacked judges and their families. So the judicial system, one of the checks and balances written into the Constitution, is in shambles right now. So many of the pillars of our democracy, including on the press, freedom of the press, have been shattered, have been handcuffed right now, and people are in retreat. Those institutions, the judiciary, the press, and just individuals, freedom of the press, freedom of speech, are in retreat. They're afraid. They're hiding, and this is a sure sign of autocracy and fascism. And I don't know where it's leading. He's attacking, as you just spoke about, the polling places, or he's going to the free elections. So it's got all the hallmarks of creeping authoritarianism. I believe we're there. There's been many commentators, people much smarter than me, professors, that have said we're already in a fascist regime. We are being led by a fascist authoritarian regime. I tend to believe that, but I also think it could get worse.
Yeah. And the absurdity of decision making is, as I say, a parallel that you can make with, say, 1930s Russia, where decisions that are mad, irrational, illogical, but may benefit somebody, may not. They may be ideologically aligned. They may be just down to the caprice and willfulness of an individual. These decisions don't get challenged. They get implemented, and they cause untold human misery and carnage. Well, we'll tackle the libertarian arguments because I want to have this debate about the fact that paid speech is not free speech, about the fact that oligarchic and monopolistic media is not free speech. But that's one for another occasion. For this one, we're going to be back tomorrow. We're going to be looking at developments in Ukraine and Russia and the oil facilities there. We should have a follow-up to that. But also we're getting closer and closer to a physical incursion onto maybe Karg Island or the Iranian mainland itself, and whatever disasters follow on from that. Thanks to everyone who has been with this format, supporting this format. We look forward to seeing you tomorrow.
Tomorrow, same time, please come here and watch us. We're going to be here every day, 5 days a week at this same time. So please join us.